Hello and welcome back to the Alexis Brooks Nutrition Channel, where we talk all things women's health, hormones, periods, and all that good stuff. Today, I want to talk about endometriosis, specifically the diet for endometriosis. So, this is something that I get asked really often, and I think there's a ton of confusion out there about if you have endometriosis, what you should eat, what you shouldn't eat, what's okay, what's not okay. So, I want to provide a little bit of clarity in this video about those things. So, just to get us kicked off, I want to talk about an anti inflammatory diet. And I think this is often what we hear about when it comes to endometriosis. It is a chronic inflammatory condition. So, eating a diet that's um, low in pro inflammatory foods and high in anti inflammatory foods is really important in order to help us balance the inflammation in our bodies. So, that is one piece. And there's a couple other pieces that I want to dive into too to make sure that we're addressing other pieces of the condition itself of endometriosis and what may not be going right in the body. I bring this up because just the other day, actually, someone mentioned to me that, like, hey, look, I know what the anti inflammatory diet is. I think I have a pretty good idea on what it is and I'm following it, but it's not doing anything. And I want you to know that the anti inflammatory diet is a really good foundation to start with. But in order to fully address endometriosis, we want to actually layer on a couple other principles to make sure that we are fully addressing the condition. So let's talk about an anti inflammatory diet. So, the foods to include for an anti inflammatory diet is, of course, plants, right? Like having a lot of fruits and vegetables, particularly vegetables. Fruits are important too because they do provide vitamins, of course. But we want to make sure that we're getting more vegetables than fruit. In general, what I'd recommend is getting 8 servings of fruits and vegetables. So, getting about 3 servings, 3 servings of fruit per day, and then the rest would be vegetables. And one way to help us do this is to make sure that half of our plate is fruit and vegetables, making sure half our plate is produce. That can help us to make sure we're getting enough of those things. And so having, yes, of course, fruits and vegetables. Along with that, we're also including other plant foods, which would be like nuts and seeds. So whether it be like walnuts, almonds, pumpkin seeds, chia seeds, flax seeds, these are also anti-inflammatory. Making sure that we're including healthy oils and anti-inflammatory oils. Olive oil is a big one. So having extra virgin olive oil does provide antioxidants. It has polyphenols in there, so it's a great source, whether it's something that you add as like if you're making your own salad or your own salad dressings, you're using that as a base of the dressing, or maybe you're drizzling your food with olive oil. It's not recommended to cook olive oil at high temperatures because it's a pretty delicate oil. So at high temperatures, it actually changes the structure and it can then become more pro-inflammatory. So if you are to cook with it, making sure that the heat is low, or again, like using it more as like a raw oil. Avocado oil is another good one too, and that one is that one is can be cooked and used at high temperatures. So you don't have to worry so much about what we refer to as the smoke point. The smoke point is much higher, so you don't have to worry about the structure changing and degrading before like at those higher temperatures. So that's another great one. Other fats, olives, avocado, even ghee or grass-fed butter. Those are healthy fats as well that we can include as anti-inflammatory. Um, Legumes. So having like beans, lentils are really great sources. Having whole grains in there, like quinoa, brown rice, millet, teff. Those are also really good ones to include. In terms of protein foods, I mentioned a couple actually. So nuts and seeds and legumes are considered plant-based proteins, right? And they provide again those the anti-inflammatory, the antioxidants. But other sources that are anti-inflammatory would be like chicken, fish, especially seafood that is like fatty fish. For example, like salmon, mackerel, anchovies, sardines. So like the oily type fish, those are great because you're gonna get omega 3s from there, and we want omega 3. So I recommend when it comes to fish and seafood to try to get that 2 to 3 times per week to really benefit from that. So that's the general scope is when we're talking about anti-inflammatory. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed another piece, maybe two pieces. One of it was spices. Spices can be really helpful. We can include spices in terms of like maybe we're adding it to our beverages. We could add it to our food. So some spices, to give you an idea, turmeric, ginger, cinnamon, and herbs as well. So like cilantro, parsley, rosemary. Um, Pretty much all of them. They are anti-inflammatory. They're considered plants. So the nice thing about our spices and our herbs is they are anti-inflammatory, but they're also delicious. So it's a nice way to change the flavor profile when you're cooking, especially if you maybe get tired of cooking the same types of foods. If you switch up the spices or you switch up the herbs, it can actually like kind of like reinvent and recreate the dish. So that's another thing I wanted to mention, along with teas. So teas can be part. They definitely are part of an anti-inflammatory diet. Some teas I always recommend are green tea, also nettle tea, cinnamon tea. Really, all the teas are anti-inflammatory. So any tea that you enjoy is a great one. But those are just a few of my favorites. Okay, so that's like the basis of anti-inflammatory diet. Now, within that, there can be some things that we can begin to look further into when it comes to endometriosis. Two things that might be on your mind are dairy and gluten. And I'm actually going to, in the future, create a video that is specific to each of these because there's quite a bit of nuance when it comes to them. But the short answer is that you can include either of those if you are able to tolerate them well. And it's not true for everyone with endometriosis that both are triggers for them. And it's also not true that it's not a trigger. So you kind of have to play around with those and be really observant when it comes to the two of those. So I say this because whether something is a trigger for you or you have an intolerance, it may not necessarily be obvious because a lot of times we have food sensitivities, it could be up to 3 days later that that symptom can come on, and it doesn't have to only be related to your digestion. So it doesn't have to be, oh, when I eat this food I get constipated or I get diarrhea or I get a stomach ache. That may not be the symptom for you that lets you know that it's an issue. It could also be you break out, maybe your skin, um, texture of your skin changes, or maybe you get acne, or maybe you get really fatigued from it, or maybe you notice joint pain. So um, these intolerances or food sensitivities don't always come in the form of gut issues. So I just want to bring that up. What I have seen is that oftentimes people who remove gluten from their diet feel better. Do they feel 100% better? No. But people that I have worked with have seen that when they remove gluten for a period of time, they end up adding it back in. They notice the difference. They don't feel they'll have a flare. They'll notice that their digestion is a little bit different when they add it back in. So you could do a trial to see what happens when you remove it, if you notice a difference, and then you can see if you notice a difference when you bring it back in. So you can do that for either the two of those, but neither of them are inherently bad. Same thing is true with dairy. Dairy is actually considered an anti-inflammatory food. There's quite a bit of research that shows that it's anti-inflammatory, and interestingly, it is a, a factor that has been shown to reduce the risk of developing endometriosis is the more dairy intake a person has. So that's interesting, I guess, little fun fact for you too. Um, but yeah, if you tolerate dairy, um, it's highly nutritious. It has a lot of minerals. It has vitamins. It has, if we're talking about like more of like fermented dairy, like kefir or yogurt, it has probiotics, which are great for the gut too. So something to play around with. And as I mentioned, I'm going to do videos specifically for each of those because there's a lot to dive into when it comes to that. Okay, so anti-inflammatory is the base of the diet. The other part of it is making sure that we are supporting the gut. So a lot of us with endometriosis, we have dysbiosis. We have an imbalance of good and bad bacteria, and this could be really problematic, especially as we're getting more and more research. We're learning more about the gut-brain axis. We're learning more about um, gut imbalances and how it impacts our mood, how it impacts our pain, how it impacts our hormones, and so many other things. So we really want to make sure that we have a diet that is gut loving, gut friendly. So, ways to do this, along with the anti inflammatory diet, is having a variety of colors in our diet. So, eating foods that are orange, that are red, that are green, that are like blue, purple, black, those sorts of colors. If we're getting a nice variety, we're also getting a good variety of bacteria that will then populate our gut. So, that's one of my first tips. Trying to get the goal is actually to aim for 30 different plant species per week. So a way to get there easier is you can try different colors of within a species. So for example, if you like bell peppers, trying like a doing like a tricolor bell pepper situation. So now you're getting three different species or different plants. And that will go towards your 30. Same thing is true like for berries, doing big mixed berries versus blueberries, or mixed greens, mixing up your salad greens or greens that you cook, um, so that you're getting more species that way too. Spices will count in that too. So 30 different plants per week. And on a meal by meal basis to kind of help you get there as a smaller goal, having three different colors with each of your three different colors, three different plants with each of your meals. Okay. So that helps out with your gut health. Another thing is to make sure that you're having probiotics within your diet. Yes, probiotics can also be taken as a supplement, but I do recommend food first, like really trying to accomplish these specific nutrient needs through your diet. So some probiotic rich foods, which I mentioned before, so yogurt and kefir, if you're able to tolerate those. We can also get it from sauerkraut, from kimchi, from fermented foods, can be sources of that. And we also want to have prebiotics. So prebiotics are the bacteria that feed the bacteria. So that's their food. Some foods that are high in prebiotics would be, or source of prebiotics would be artichoke, asparagus, oats, garlic, onion, banana, apples. So those are some examples of some prebiotics to help you populate and keep those populations alive. What else can we do? Eating slowly, taking your time while you eat, trying to take at least 20 minutes for a meal. If you're someone who eats a meal in 5 minutes, can you do 10 minutes? So can we stretch out a meal so that you're able to be relaxed and in a state for digestion, which helps to improve your gut health too. Um, what else can we do? So I talked about prebiotics, talked about probiotics, the diversity. Those are some key things that I'll leave you with that we need to make sure that we are including for Endo diet. The next thing I want to share with you is the Endo diet is also, it addresses hormone imbalances, or hormone balance, should I put it as. So there are some specific foods that help to balance our hormones and patterns of eating. So keeping in mind, endometriosis is an estrogen dependent condition. So part of what helps the lesions grow and the disease to develop and progress is estrogen. So we really want to keep estrogen in check while also supporting progesterone. So we want to make sure that they're in a really nice balance. One of the first things we could do that I talk about often on this channel is to eat a balanced meal. So having our protein, our fat, and our fiber with every single meal, because the more we support blood sugar balance, we can also support our hormones as a whole. So that's a nice foundational piece for hormones. Specific foods, cruciferous vegetables. So including cruciferous vegetables, this includes broccoli, cabbage, kale, Brussels sprouts. Having these, trying to get at least 3 servings a week, and you can gradually work your way up from there. But this helps to break down estrogen, so it's a nice way to detoxify estrogen and support the liver. Um, Another thing is flax seeds. So having ground flax seeds, having 2 tablespoons a day, however you choose to have it, is a great one. Seed cycling is a way to accomplish this as well. I think I've spoken about this in previous videos, but the first half of your cycle, you would have ground flax seeds and flax seeds and pumpkin seeds. Second half of your cycle, having ground sesame seeds and sunflower seeds. But those can also help you with balancing hormones. Um, what else? Overall, okay, so broccoli sprouts is another one. You don't really need much of it. It's really very concentrated, but it is a form of sulforaphane, which helps to support the liver and again estrogen detoxification. So that's something that you can include, especially if you are dealing with higher estrogen levels, which a lot of us are. Um, Nettle tea, I think I mentioned that as like the teas, but this is for anti-inflammatory, but it's also supports the liver. Having bitter foods helps to support the liver too. So we want to make sure we're having foods that support the liver because the liver is what helps us to break down our hormones. So that is why that's such a key thing. The last thing I want to add as part of an endo diet is it's one that's overall it's nutrient dense. So you notice that all these foods I'm talking about, they are whole foods, they're nutrient dense, but there are specific nutrients that we need in a higher amount with endo because of the level of inflammation that our bodies have. Two of them that are really important that I want to highlight, but there's others, but iron and zinc. So both of these tend to be low in the diet and low in the blood for people with endometriosis. So iron, both of these can be found they're readily available in animal sources, whether it be chicken, turkey, eggs, seafood. You can find them pretty easily. Zinc, particularly, a really high source of zinc would be oysters. So if you like oysters, that's something that's great to add in. You can buy canned oysters and add them to a pasta. You can have them with some crackers as a snack. You can play around with that, but that'd be a great addition. So when we're talking about plant source, excuse me, plant sources for zinc, pumpkin seeds, sesame seeds, also chickpeas could be some good sources. And for iron, we can get that from dark leafy greens like spinach, like kale, also can come from beets. But something to know about iron, if it's coming from a plant based source, is that it's not as easily absorbed in comparison to an animal source. So, in comparison to eating a steak or eggs or chicken or seafood, our body has a harder time to absorb that. So, for one, we're going to have to eat that food in a larger amount. And number two, we just want to make sure that we're adding a vitamin C source to it to help with absorption. So that would be our citrus fruits like oranges, for example, also kiwi, berries. We have vegetables that are high in vitamin C like bell peppers, broccoli. So we're squeezing lemon on your food, whatever it is, but making sure that you are adding a vitamin C source with that plant-based iron source for better absorption. So those are the key things I wanted to talk about when it comes to eating for endometriosis. I hope this is clear and it makes sense as to why the anti-inflammatory diet isn't enough. Although it's a really great foundation, we want to also make sure we're keeping in mind hormone balance. We want to keep in mind specific nutrients, and we want to keep in mind our gut health too. All right, so stay tuned for those other videos. I'll be talking about gluten specifically and also dairy. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you soon.